Hey Gearslutz, it's Tom from Audient. I'd like to take you through the new ASP8024 Heritage Edition. So the whole genesis behind doing the 8024 Heritage Edition is to honor David Dearden, really, who's been sort of our mentor for a long time, as well as many others in the industry, a legendary console designer. The 8024 itself is coming up on its 20th anniversary, so about 20 years old. And we thought it was about time to sort of spruce it up, bring it into the kind of modern workflows with a few more features, and just effectively give it a new lease of life with some slightly sort of sexed up look, I suppose we could call it. So if we start with the appearance, we've gone with what we're calling the Midnight Raven fade, or the color layering on the overlay. So it's got a sort of dark gray, blue-gray that fades into a sort of midnight purple, black. So it's got a much more direct and striking look with a silver overlay. A little point for those of you on Gearslutz, so I know this will be a big thing that you guys talk about. As an engineer myself, recall, it's not a fully recallable console. Doing that would cost 60, 70, 80,000 pounds. There are desks out there that do that if you need that. What I have done is increase the scaling around all of the knobs, so you've got more divisions per scale, so when you do photographic recall, like iPhone recall, you've got a much more reliable way of recalling your knob positioning and that kind of thing. What we'll do is take you through the channel bucket, which is effectively the same electronics as the classic console. You've got the discrete Class A front end of the mic pre and the tape input. It's a fully inline console, so you have short and long fader. We've changed the overlays and switches and the LEDs, so you can easily see whether you've got mic or tape on the short or long fader, so you can pick that up on camera. You've got mic red for recording and tape is green for playback, and you can flip those for the two fader paths, which is really useful when you're across the control room or you're patching something and you want to know where you are. Also, we sell a lot to education, and when you're stood across the room telling someone who's learning you want to be on the green channel on the short fader, then they know what you mean. So we've done the same color coding switch caps. 48 volts is red, so you've got a warning. Chunky fader caps, overall a slightly muted classic color look, quite hench overall. The goal was to make it quite a sort of dominating board that felt like a centerpiece for a studio. We've added, just to move back on camera, the walnut armrest was a premium option. We now offer that as standard with the Heritage Edition. So it's handmade locally by our rural factory, by a master carpenter. And you have walnut script tray on the patch bay or the producer's desk. So overall, a nice high-end bit of timber. I've mentioned before that we offer this with an extended keyboard section. So if you want to, you can have kind of like a thicker armrest in the middle for, even fit like small controller keyboards on there if you want to play and produce in the sweet spot. The top trim is black ash. We've extended that to 180 millimeters. Small Gearslutz factoid, I suppose. In the video, you'll see that I posted. You've got the little paper cones or like an Auratone style near-field monitor. These can now be fitted on the meter bridge, which they couldn't before. It was a bit too thin to hold them reliably. So you can hold NS10s up there or some small Amphiums, or go crazy like we have and put the 218s on top. We offer a 300 millimeter extended with a support bracket if you want to put heavier speakers up there and have more stability when you want to put near fields up there instead of using stands. So that's the overall look of it. If we move into the middle of the section here where you've got the DLC module, the DLC is our dual layer control module, which gives you transport control over Pro Tools or your workstation of choice, Cubase or whatever. Logic, Cubase and Pro Tools actually. This is an 8-fader VCA module and also a control surface. So in the DAW layer, we're now controlling faders in Pro Tools. We have transport, we have jog wheels, we have encoders to adjust panning, plugins, aux sends, that kind of thing. You can flip faders to auxes as well. So you have control over the sort of Huey layer of 4 or 5 inserts and auxes. In the analog layer, which you go to when you turn off the red button, you now have 8 VCAs, and these can be routed on the console. So the DLC is a modular option. You can add this, if you wish, to the desk. And this gives you 8 VCA automatable faders that can be either patched into the subgroups, so you can do things like ride the BVs higher in the chorus, punch up the drum parallel if you want to bring a bit more energy and density in the hooks or whatever you're doing. Or you can take it off the subgroup routing, and actually DLC then becomes its own in and out connectors on the back of the console. which you can then patch to any insert point on the desk. So you could automate pre and post compressor, you could automate a short fader and a long fader. So when you combine that with in-the-box automation, you have a very flexible workflow without having to have a really expensive, fully automated console. It's amazing how much damage you can actually do with those 8 faders. Worth mentioning that we have a producer's desk module which you can add in the center if you wish. The VESA arm option is available for either that or DLC, so you can have screens mounted lower and out of the sweet spot so it doesn't mess with phantom center too much. This is actually adjustable and angled. Maybe you can get around the back to have a look at that. So you can change this on 2 socket and ball joints and move that around. With a double PD in the middle of the desk, because it's modular, you could actually fit a Slate Raven. I'm sure a lot of Gearslutz guys would find that intriguing. You could fit an Avid S3 there as well if you wanted to have very much a hybrid workflow and a centerpiece in the middle of the sweet spot. So if you follow me, we'll move over to the master section, which is where the sort of enhanced features are now. Aside from the new look, we've got new aluminium knobs and a very high quality Alps pot, a blue velvet style main monitor pot, because you touch this every day. This is life, you know, this is studio life. This is the client. It's the only knob the client ever grabs. It's the only one they're going to play with, so it feels better, it's stronger, it's got really great left and right matching. In terms of like sexy new features, I suppose, the main mix bus of the console has been upgraded with 990 op amps made by John Hardy in America. So these discrete op amps provide a more muscular, open mix bus tone, gives the console just a bigger sweet spot to work into and push into. So if you mix on it, you have the old traditional workflow. If you work in the box, you come out onto the desk, you have a more muscular mix bus to run into. Becoming part of David's heritage, or relating to part of David's heritage, we've created what we call a retro iron mix bus mode, which you can get to down here in the fader section, master fader section. So retro iron, when you turn this on, incorporates a discrete class AB amplifier that's inspired by like late 60s, early 70s electronics, quite fat in second and third harmonic distortion, and that drives a pair of really large Carnhill output transformers, steel transformers, which give you a very kind of dense, glued, low end, great for bringing out the body and electric guitars, kick drums, softening off the transients and mixing into that sort of the lean point of the console, as one of my friends likes to call that. Then you've got 2 switches which you can engage, which is low bump and high lift. And this changes the personality of the mix bus. So you have a very fast, punchy 60 hertz enhancement in the low end, and you have an air lift towards 20 kilohertz. So with the transformers on, you can either have classic retro, fatter retro, scooped retro, or airy retro. So you've got all those personalities that you can mix into, which really changes the sound of the console. On top of this, with the bus compressor, we've now added a very gentle high-pass filter or bass expand to the sidechain. It's not traditional in the way that it works, so that it's very, very open sounding. It doesn't just let the kick drums through, it lets the whole mix breathe, which means you can dial in the compression a lot easier with the new sort of PPM style, or it's actually a milliamp DC meter that's measuring the VCA compression. So it looks better, it's easier to dial in. The bus compressor has a wider sweet spot. You've got a reference quality headphone amp on the master section as well, which you can access with Alt 3. So you could run 4 pairs of speakers or 3 pairs of speakers and a pair of headphones to enable you to check on, you know, iPod type of reference for more modern mixing, translation to that kind of thing. It's a very detailed and fast headphone amp, which I spent quite a while working on so that it's accurate enough to really trust for monitoring. Where do I finish? Well, the whole thing is modular. You can go from 12 channels to 72. You can add patch bay, 24, 36, or 48, which we've got a 24 on here today. That's very good value for money, the patch bay, and it's worth noting that that also comes with 144 tie line points at the bottom. So you effectively get almost two full Bantam, 96-point Bantam bays included at the bottom for all of your outboards, and that is actually customizable between through and half normal internally on the cards, which is easy to do. So it's very, very powerful. And you've got the producer's desk module as well with the extended trim options. It's pretty powerful. You can surely find a combination in here that works for you one way or the other. And being a 24-bus console, it's perfect for tape machine or working with the new Radar Studio. one final thing is we offer a modification which allows you to have 48 bus outputs. So if you had a 48 frame, channels 25 to 48 can go to their own buses, so you can effectively get 48 direct outputs for recording orchestras, or alternatively lots of output sends for gear. Interestingly, this button here, if you have that mod installed, enables you to link the 25 to 48 buses into 1 to 24, so the whole desk works like a standard 24 bus console. And as a final point of humor, if you don't have that modification installed when you order the console, this button is labeled DFA. I'm sure you can figure out what that stands for and use it to your advantage when required. That's pretty much it. I think I mentioned fader link for the 64-bit AAX, VST and audio units for DLC as well, which is new for us at the show. That's pretty much the whole Heritage Edition. Check out the website for more information. Thanks very much for the long listen. Cheers, Gearslutz. Catch you in a bit.